I never thought my own daughter would cut me out of her life so completely that she'd plan an entire family vacation without even telling me. But what Jessica didn't know was that the 5-star resort she chose for her perfect family getaway belonged to me. When hotel security approached her poolside with eviction papers at my request, the look on her face was worth every sleepless night she'd caused me. My name is Margaret Thompson, and at 62, I've built something most people only dream of. From behind my mahogany desk on the 42nd floor of my Manhattan penthouse office, I can see the city sprawling beneath me like a kingdom I've conquered one hotel at a time. Thompson Luxury Resorts isn't just a business. It's my life's work, born from 35 years of climbing from a minimum wage front desk clerk to the CEO of a hospitality empire worth over $200 million. Every morning starts the same way. Coffee at 5:30, black with no sugar, while I review occupancy reports from our 12 properties scattered across the Caribbean and Mediterranean. The numbers tell stories. Which locations are thriving, which need attention, where we should expand next. But this particular morning, as I watched the sunrise paint the Manhattan skyline gold, I wasn't thinking about profit margins or expansion plans. I was thinking about my daughter Jessica and how we drifted so far apart that she barely returned my calls anymore. It wasn't always like this. When Jessica was little, she'd spend hours in my office, coloring at the conference table while I worked late into the evening. She'd make me executive decisions about which crayon colors went best together, and I'd treat her suggestions with the same seriousness I gave to board meetings. Even as a teenager, when most kids wanted nothing to do with their parents, Jessica would still curl up on my couch and tell me about her day, her dreams, her fears about the future. I'd turned down countless opportunities to expand internationally because I refused to miss her school plays, soccer games, or graduation ceremonies. When other CEOs questioned my priorities, I'd simply say that building a business empire meant nothing if I lost my family in the process. Jessica was my world, and I thought I was hers too. But somewhere along the way, things changed. It started gradually. Phone calls getting shorter, visits becoming less frequent, excuses multiplying like interest on a bad investment. At first, I blamed it on normal life transitions. She'd gotten married to Brad Miller 3 years ago, had started her own marketing firm, was busy building her own version of success. I understood ambition. I'd lived it myself. Brad seemed nice enough at their wedding, though something about his smile never quite reached his eyes when he looked at me. He was handsome in that polished corporate way that screamed, networking event regular, and he treated Jessica like a trophy he'd won at some exclusive auction. During their engagement, I'd offered to help with the wedding expenses, but Brad had insisted they handle everything themselves. "We want to start our marriage as independent adults," he'd said, with just enough emphasis on independent to make his point clear. The grandchildren changed everything, or so I thought. Emma came first, 8 years old now, with Jessica's stubborn streak and my green eyes. Then Michael, 6 years old and obsessed with dinosaurs and superhero movies. When they were around, Jessica softened back into the daughter I remembered. She'd laugh at my terrible jokes, roll her eyes at my insistence on spoiling the kids with expensive gifts, and for brief moments, it felt like we were a family again. But those moments became fewer and farther between. Jessica started screening my calls, claiming she was too busy to chat. Family dinners became awkward affairs where Brad dominated the conversation with stories about his latest business deals, while Jessica stared at her phone. The kids would beg to come stay with Grandma, but somehow there was always a soccer tournament, a birthday party, or some other conflict that prevented it. The first real red flag came 6 months ago when I invited Jessica to join the board of Thompson Luxury Resorts. It wasn't nepotism. She had a business degree from Columbia and 5 years of marketing experience. She was smart, capable, and I genuinely believed she could bring fresh perspectives to our strategy. But when I made the offer over dinner at Le Bernardin, her favorite restaurant since childhood, she barely looked up from her salmon. "Mom, I appreciate the offer, but I need to focus on my own career right now," she'd said, using that careful, diplomatic tone she'd perfected for difficult clients. Brad and I have discussed it, and we think it's better if I maintain my independence from the family business. Brad and I have discussed it, not I've thought about it or I need time to consider. They'd already made the decision together, without me. That's when I realized I wasn't losing my daughter to natural life progression. I was being systematically excluded from her world. The conversations became stilted, filled with the kind of polite small talk you'd make with a distant acquaintance. Jessica would update me on the kids' activities with the efficiency of a status report, avoiding any personal details about her own life. When I'd try to dig deeper, ask about her feelings or her marriage or her dreams, she'd deflect with practiced ease. "Everything's fine, Mom, just busy with work and the kids. You know how it is." But I didn't know how it was, because she wouldn't let me in. The woman who used to call me 3 times a week to discuss everything from office politics to what she should wear on date nights had become a stranger who sent brief text responses and rarely initiated contact. During our last phone conversation, I'd mentioned wanting to plan a family vacation for everyone, something tropical and relaxing where we could reconnect. Jessica had gone quiet for so long, I thought the call had dropped. "That sounds nice, Mom, but we're pretty booked up for the rest of the year. Maybe next summer?" Next summer. Always next something with Jessica these days. Next month, next season, next year. An endless parade of postponement that kept me at arm's length from the family I'd worked so hard to build and provide for. I started noticing other changes too. Jessica's social media posts, which used to include photos of the kids with their grandmother, suddenly featured only family shots that somehow never included me. Birthday parties were mentioned in passing after they'd already happened. School events I used to be invited to were now adults only, or immediate family only. Apparently, grandmothers no longer qualified as immediate family. Brad's influence was subtle but unmistakable. During family gatherings, he'd steer conversations away from my business, dismissing my stories as work talk that was boring for the kids. He'd suggest activities that conveniently excluded me or find reasons why they needed to leave early. Jessica, who used to defend me fiercely against any criticism, now remained silent when Brad made his little digs about older generations not understanding modern parenting or the importance of nuclear family time. The worst part wasn't the exclusion itself, it was Jessica's apparent comfort with it. She'd adopted Brad's viewpoints as if they were her own original thoughts, speaking about healthy boundaries and not enabling codependent relationships with the confidence of someone who'd read one self-help book and considered herself an expert. The daughter who used to value my opinion above all others now treated my advice like outdated software that needed immediate replacement. I tried confronting the issue directly once during what I thought was a good conversation about Emma's piano lessons. Jessica had been animated, excited about her daughter's musical progress, and for a moment it felt like old times. That's when I made my mistake. I haven't heard Emma play in months. Maybe I could come to her next recital. The warmth in Jessica's voice disappeared instantly, replaced by that careful, professional tone I'd grown to hate. "Oh, Mom, I don't think that would work. It's at the school, and they have limited seating. Plus, Brad's parents are already coming, and we don't want to overwhelm Emma with too much family pressure." Brad's parents, who lived 3 hours away and saw the kids maybe twice a year, got priority over the grandmother who'd been present for every major milestone of Emma's life. The message was clear. I was no longer essential family. I was optional, dispensable, someone whose presence was more burden than blessing. That night, I lay awake in my king-sized bed, staring at the ceiling of my empty penthouse, wondering where I'd gone wrong. Had I been too successful? Too independent? Had my refusal to play the traditional grandmother role, baking cookies and knitting sweaters instead of running board meetings, somehow disqualified me from my daughter's new version of family? The isolation felt crushing in a way that business failures never had. I'd built an empire, provided financial security for generations, created jobs for thousands of people, but I couldn't secure a place in my own daughter's vacation plans. The irony wasn't lost on me. I owned properties all over the world where families came to bond and create memories, yet I couldn't buy myself an invitation to my own grandchildren's childhood. I started second-guessing every interaction, replaying conversations for hidden meanings, analyzing Jessica's responses like quarterly reports. Was I too pushy, too distant, too successful for her comfort, too traditional for her modern sensibilities? The questions multiplied without answers, leaving me feeling like a stranger in my own family story. But I had no idea just how much of a stranger I'd become until my 62nd birthday arrived with all the warmth and celebration of a root canal. That's when I discovered that being excluded from phone calls and dinners was nothing compared to being erased from major life events entirely, and what I found out that night would change everything between us forever. The birthday dinner was supposed to be simple, just family at Le Bernardin, the restaurant where we'd celebrated every major milestone for the past 15 years. I'd made reservations for 6 people: Jessica, Brad, the kids, my sister Carol, and myself. Nothing fancy, nothing overwhelming, just the people who mattered most, sharing a meal, and maybe, hopefully, some genuine conversation. I spent 3 hours getting ready, choosing the navy dress Jessica had complimented last Christmas, the pearl earrings Emma loved to play with, the perfume that always made Michael wrinkle his nose and declare that Grandma smelled like flowers. I even had gifts wrapped and waiting, a limited edition art set for Emma, who'd been talking about wanting to paint real paintings, and a complete dinosaur encyclopedia for Michael that I'd special ordered from London. By 7:15, I was sitting alone at a table set for 6, watching the waitstaff exchange knowing glances as they walked past with trays meant for families who'd actually shown up. I called Jessica's phone 5 times, straight to voicemail. I tried Brad's number. Same result. Even texted my sister Carol, thinking maybe there had been some miscommunication about timing. "Sorry, Maggie." Carol's response came 20 minutes later. "Jessica never invited me. Thought it was just you guys. Just you guys." Except there were no you guys. Just me, sitting at an empty table while other families laughed and celebrated around me. The maitre d' approached with the kind of professional sympathy reserved for stood-up dates and abandoned diners. "Miss Thompson, would you like to move to a smaller table, or perhaps reschedule?" The humiliation burned worse than any business failure I'd ever experienced. At least in boardrooms, people had the courtesy to reject you to your face. This was worse. This was being so insignificant that your own daughter couldn't even be bothered to cancel properly. I moved to a table for one and ordered a glass of wine, telling myself there had to be an explanation. Emergency at work, sick kids, car trouble, something that would make sense of this complete abandonment. I was halfway through my second glass when I made the mistake of opening Instagram. There, posted just 30 minutes earlier, was a video of Jessica laughing on a pristine beach, while Emma and Michael built sandcastles in the background. The caption read, "Finally, some family time without drama. Day 2 in paradise and loving every second. Blessed Turks and Caicos. Family first, no filter, living our best life." I stared at the screen until the image blurred, not from the wine, but from the tears I refused to let fall in public. They weren't stuck in traffic or dealing with an emergency. They were on vacation, in Turks and Caicos. While I sat alone at a restaurant table they'd never intended to fill. The next video was even worse. Brad doing cannonballs into crystal clear water while the kids cheered, Jessica recording from a beach chair with a drink in her hand. She looked relaxed, happy, free, everything she never seemed to be when I was around. The timestamp showed they'd been there for 2 days already, which meant they'd planned this trip, packed, traveled, and started their vacation all while letting me believe we were having a birthday dinner. I scrolled through the posts with masochistic dedication, watching my family create memories I'd never be part of. Beach dinners under string lights, snorkeling adventures, sunset walks, all the activities I'd hoped we might do together someday, now happening without me. Jessica had even posted a selfie with both kids, captioned "my whole world," as if I'd never existed at all. The worst part was the comments from friends and family members, people who clearly knew about the trip and had probably been wondering why Grandma wasn't included. Brad's mother had commented, "Looks amazing. So glad you finally took time for yourselves," which suggested this vacation was somehow Jessica's reward for limiting my involvement in their lives. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica, sent hours after my 5th missed call. "Sorry, Mom, signal is really bad here. Can we talk when I get back? Signal is really bad here." Well, she posted HD videos in real time with perfect clarity. The lie was so casual, so effortless, that I wondered how long she'd been lying to me about other things. How many times had bad signal or dead battery or crazy day at work actually meant I don't want to talk to you? I paid for my untouched dinner and walked home through Manhattan streets that suddenly felt foreign and cold. In my penthouse office, surrounded by photos of resort properties I'd built and awards I'd won, I felt more alone than I had since my husband died 8 years ago. At least then, Jessica had been my anchor, calling daily to check on me, bringing the kids over for impromptu dinners, treating me like someone whose presence mattered. Now I was the inconvenience they vacationed to escape from. That night, I did something I hadn't done since the early days of building my business. I cried until I couldn't breathe. Not the dignified tears of someone processing grief, but the ugly, gasping sobs of someone who just realized they'd lost something precious without even knowing it was gone. But somewhere between the tears and the wine, something else started building in my chest. Not just hurt, anger. The kind of cold, calculated anger that had helped me survive in male-dominated boardrooms and turn down acquisition offers from competitors who thought a widow would be easy prey. If Jessica wanted to treat me like a stranger, like someone so unimportant that my own birthday wasn't worth a phone call, then maybe it was time she learned what it felt like to be on the receiving end of that kind of casual dismissal. I opened my laptop and started researching Turks and Caicos resorts, not because I wanted to join their vacation, that ship had clearly sailed, but because I wanted to understand exactly where my family had chosen to hide from me. The posts showed a pristine beach, infinity pools, and luxury accommodations that looked familiar in a way that made my pulse quicken. Ocean Club Resort. The name appeared in several of Jessica's location tags, and as I pulled up their website, my anger transformed into something much more interesting: opportunity. Because Jessica had made one crucial mistake in her perfect plan to exclude me from her life. She'd chosen to vacation at a resort I'd quietly purchased 6 months ago through a shell company as part of my expansion into the Caribbean market. My daughter had no idea she was relaxing by my pool, eating at my restaurants, and sleeping in my beds while posting about her drama-free family time. She'd managed to exclude me from her vacation while literally staying at my property. The irony was delicious, but it was also something more: leverage. For the first time in months, I smiled as I reached for my phone to call David Park, the general manager of Ocean Club Resort. It was time to remind my daughter that actions have consequences, and that sometimes the people you take for granted are the ones who hold more power than you realize. Jessica wanted to learn what family life was like without me. She was about to get a masterclass in exactly that. David Park's voice was professionally calm when he called me back at 7 a.m. sharp, just as I'd requested. As the general manager of Ocean Club Resort, he was used to handling delicate situations, but I could hear the curiosity in his tone when I'd asked for a complete briefing on the Thompson-Miller family's stay. "Ms. Thompson, I have the information you requested about your family members. I have to say, this is quite an unusual situation." I was sitting in my office with my second cup of coffee, watching the sunrise over Manhattan while my daughter was probably watching it set over my Caribbean property. The irony wasn't lost on me. Tell me everything, David, and I mean everything." What I learned in the next 20 minutes shattered what little remained of my illusions about Jessica's recent behavior. This wasn't just a spontaneous vacation to get away from family drama. This was a carefully orchestrated campaign to rewrite our family history with me as the villain. "Mrs. Thompson Miller checked in 3 days ago under her maiden name," David explained, "which is why it took our system time to flag the connection. She specifically requested that we not mention the ownership structure of the resort to anyone in her party. She told our concierge that she was here to escape from family pressure and wanted to ensure complete privacy from any uninvited guests." Family pressure. Uninvited guests. The clinical language of someone who'd turned their mother into a problem to be solved rather than a person to be loved. "She also filed a preemptive request with our security team," David continued, his voice carefully neutral. "She asked that if anyone claiming to be a family member tried to contact her or visit the property, they should be politely turned away without notification. She was quite specific about this, Ms. Thompson. She mentioned an overbearing mother who might try to interfere with their family time." The words hit like a physical blow. Overbearing. Interfering. These weren't descriptions of someone who'd made mistakes or crossed boundaries. These were the words you'd use to describe a stalker, a threat, someone dangerous to your family's well-being. "There's more," David said quietly. "Yesterday, she filed a formal complaint with our guest services about what she called the invasive nature of extended family expectations. She specifically mentioned feeling suffocated by generational guilt tactics and requested that our staff help maintain what she called healthy boundaries during their stay." I sat in stunned silence, absorbing the magnitude of Jessica's betrayal. She hadn't just excluded me from this vacation. She'd actively prepared defenses against me, as if I were some kind of predator who might hunt them down and ruin their perfect family time. She'd weaponized the resort staff against me using my own property. "Ms. Thompson, are you still there?" "Yes," I managed, though my voice sounded foreign to my own ears. "David, I need you to pull the audio recordings from yesterday's complaint filing. I assume you have them for quality assurance purposes?" "We do, but Ms. Thompson, I'm not sure." "David, I own this resort. I pay your salary and the salaries of everyone who works there. I'm not asking you to violate anyone's privacy. I'm asking you to let me hear what my daughter said about me in what she believed was a safe space." 20 minutes later, I was listening to Jessica's voice, clear and confident, explaining to the guest services manager why she needed protection from her own mother. "Look, I love my mom, but she has serious boundary issues. She thinks because she's successful in business, she can manage everyone else's life too. This vacation is supposed to be about my nuclear family, my husband and my children, without the drama and guilt trips and constant need for attention. My mother has a way of making everything about her, and frankly, we needed a break from that dynamic." The guest services manager had responded with professional sympathy, assuring Jessica that they would do everything possible to maintain her family's privacy and security. But Jessica wasn't finished. "The thing is, she doesn't understand that my children need to see what a normal family looks like without all the manipulation and emotional pressure. My husband and I are trying to raise them with healthy boundaries, and that's hard to do when there's this constant presence of someone who thinks money can buy relationships and attention. Money can buy relationships." The accusation cut deeper than anything else because it revealed how completely Jessica had rewritten our entire history. Every gift I'd given, every opportunity I'd provided, every sacrifice I'd made, all of it had been reduced to manipulation tactics in her mind. She gave us money for the wedding, but there were so many strings attached, so many expectations about how grateful we should be. She pays for the kids' private school, but then expects to be involved in every decision about their education. It's exhausting, honestly. We just want to be a normal family, without owing anyone anything or having to perform gratitude constantly. I hung up the phone and stared at the wall for a long time, processing not just Jessica's words, but the casual confidence with which she'd delivered them. This wasn't the frustration of a daughter struggling with a difficult relationship. This was the testimony of someone who'd already written me off completely. She'd turned my love into manipulation, my generosity into control, and my desire to be involved in their lives into invasive behavior that required professional intervention. In Jessica's new narrative, I wasn't the mother who'd worked 18-hour days to build a fortune that could secure their future. I was the villain they needed to escape from. That's when I realized this vacation wasn't just about excluding me from one family trip. This was Jessica's trial run for excluding me from their lives entirely. I called David back. I need you to document every interaction the Thompson-Miller family has had with our staff, every complaint, every request, every conversation about family boundaries or privacy concerns. Send it all to my personal email within the hour. Ms. Thompson, may I ask what you're planning to do with this information? For the first time in days, I smiled. I'm planning to give my daughter exactly what she asked for, David. She wants to be treated like a normal family without any special consideration for relationships or gratitude. She wants to experience what it's like when money can't buy her way out of consequences. She's about to get both of those things. Should I be concerned about potential legal issues? Absolutely not. Everything I'm planning to do is completely within my rights as the property owner. Jessica requested privacy from family interference, and I'm going to respect that request so thoroughly that she'll never forget it. The next morning, I had David compile a complete dossier on Jessica's stay. The details painted a picture of entitled guests who'd made increasingly demanding requests since their arrival. They'd complained about noise from the children's area near their suite, requested that housekeeping avoid their room during specific hours, and asked for exclusive access to certain amenities during their preferred times. Brad had been particularly difficult according to the staff notes. He demanded upgrades, complained about service timing, and made several condescending comments about island time and local work ethic, the kind of ugly American tourist behavior that made hospitality workers develop thick skin and fake smiles. But the most revealing detail came from the resort's social media monitoring system. Jessica had been posting constantly, but her location tags and captions told a story she probably didn't realize she was telling. Day 1. Finally, somewhere beautiful without drama. Day 2. Peace at last. No family stress. Day 3. Teaching my kids what normal family time looks like. Day 4. Best vacation ever because we're just being ourselves. Every single post was a subtle dig at me, a public declaration that their happiness was directly proportional to my absence. She was using my own resort as a platform to celebrate my exclusion from their lives. That's when I knew exactly how to handle this situation. I called my legal team first, making sure every action I planned to take was completely within my rights as a property owner. Then I called David and gave him very specific instructions about how to handle the next phase of the Thompson-Miller family's vacation. David, I need you to inform the guests in the presidential suite that the property ownership structure has made it necessary to reassess their reservation status. Tell them that due to conflicts of interest between the property owner and their party, their stay can no longer be accommodated and they'll need to check out immediately. Ms. Thompson, they've paid for a week-long stay. There could be significant blowback. They'll receive a full refund, naturally. But David, I want this handled with the same level of professional courtesy they've shown our staff, which is to say, minimal courtesy with maximum inconvenience. I understand. When should this happen? I looked at my watch. It was 2 p.m. in Turks and Caicos, which meant Jessica and her family would be at peak relaxation by the pool, probably planning their afternoon activities and feeling completely secure in their drama-free paradise. Right now, David, send security to their location immediately. I want this handled publicly, professionally, but unmistakably. They requested privacy from family interference, so they won't be getting any advance warning or special consideration. And if they ask who the property owner is, tell them the truth. Tell them exactly who they've been hiding from. 30 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from David. Mission accomplished. Security footage attached if you'd like to review. I did want to review it. I wanted to see the exact moment my daughter realized that her perfect family vacation had been happening on my property, funded by my investment, managed by my employees, all while she publicly celebrated her freedom from my invasive presence. The security footage was better than I could have imagined. Jessica was lounging by the infinity pool in a designer swimsuit I'd probably paid for indirectly, watching Emma and Michael splash in the shallow end while Brad worked on his laptop nearby. They looked like the perfect American family living their best life, exactly as her Instagram posts had portrayed. Then, resort security approached. I watched Chief Security Officer Martinez walk up to Jessica's lounge chair with the kind of professional bearing that immediately signals serious business. Jessica's body language shifted from relaxed to alert in seconds, the way it does when someone realizes their vacation is about to be interrupted by reality. The conversation was too distant for audio, but I could read the progression of emotions on Jessica's face. Confusion, then annoyance, then concern, then something approaching panic as Martinez explained that their stay was being terminated immediately. Brad jumped up from his laptop, clearly agitated, gesturing in the aggressive way men do when they think their money should solve problems instantly. I could practically hear his voice. "Do you know who we are? This is unacceptable. We demand to speak to the manager." But the truly satisfying moment came when Martinez apparently told them who the property owner was. Jessica's face went through a series of expressions I'd never seen before: disbelief, recognition, horror, and finally, a kind of sick understanding. She looked around the resort, at the pools, the restaurants, the luxury accommodations, as if seeing them for the first time. Because in a way, she was seeing them as mine, not as her escape from me. The children were confused, asking questions their parents couldn't answer. Emma kept pointing at the pool, clearly not understanding why they had to leave when they were having so much fun. Michael was crying, clinging to Jessica's leg as staff members approached with luggage carts. Brad was on his phone, probably trying to find alternative accommodations on an island where luxury resorts book months in advance. Jessica sat down heavily in her lounge chair, staring at the water as if it might provide answers for how her perfect vacation had turned into a nightmare. But the moment that made everything worth it came when Jessica finally looked directly at the security camera. For just a few seconds, across hundreds of miles and through a computer screen, my daughter and I made eye contact. Even through the grainy footage, I could see the recognition in her eyes. She knew I was watching. She knew I'd orchestrated this entire situation. And she knew that every moment of her drama-free family time had been happening under my roof, subsidized by my success, protected by my employees. The irony was perfect. Jessica had gotten exactly what she asked for. She'd wanted to be treated like a normal family without special consideration for relationships or obligations. She'd wanted to experience life without my invasive presence and family pressure. So I'd given her the full, normal family experience. Being told to leave a property by security because the owner had decided they were no longer welcome. No family connection to smooth things over, no special treatment, no second chances. Just the cold, professional reality of how business works when you don't have an overbearing mother to make phone calls and solve problems behind the scenes. I watched them pack up their perfect family vacation, knowing they'd spend the next several hours scrambling to find alternative accommodations, dealing with cranky children, and explaining to friends and family why their Instagram perfect getaway had ended so abruptly. They'd wanted independence from family obligations. They were about to learn exactly how expensive independence could be. 6 months later, I'm sitting in the same Manhattan office, but everything has changed. The view is the same, the coffee is the same, even my morning routine is identical, but the phone calls are different now. Jessica calls every Tuesday at exactly 7 p.m., not because she wants to, but because Dr. Patricia Hoffman, the family therapist we've been seeing, assigned it as homework. The conversations are stilted and careful, full of therapeutic language about boundaries and communication styles and intergenerational trauma, but they're conversations nonetheless. "Mom, I wanted to talk to you about Emma's school project," Jessica said during last week's scheduled call. "She's doing a presentation about successful businesswomen, and she asked if she could interview you." 6 months ago, this would have been a casual request, maybe even an assumed given. Now it's a carefully negotiated diplomatic exchange, cleared through proper channels and presented as a formal proposal. "Of course," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "I'd be happy to help Emma with her project." Brad and I talked about it, and we think it would be good for her to understand that families can have complicated dynamics but still support each other professionally. Families can have complicated dynamics. This is what our relationship has become, a complication to be managed rather than a bond to be cherished. But it's progress, according to Dr. Hoffman. It's better than the complete radio silence that followed the Turks and Caicos incident. Brad has been the most resistant to therapy, spending most sessions explaining why his approach to family boundaries was modern and healthy, while mine was outdated and controlling. But even he's had to acknowledge his role in systematically isolating Jessica from me, especially after Dr. Hoffman played back some of the resort complaint recordings I'd provided as evidence. "It sounds like you were helping your wife build a case against her mother rather than helping them resolve their differences," Dr. Hoffman had observed, with the kind of clinical precision that makes people squirm. "Can you help me understand why you felt that was the best approach for your family's long-term well-being?" Brad's explanations had been less convincing under professional scrutiny. Turns out healthy boundaries and nuclear family independence sound less noble when you're forced to explain them to someone trained in family systems therapy. The children have been the most honest about the whole situation, in the way that only kids can be. "Grandma, why did you make us leave the pretty hotel?" Emma had asked during our first supervised visit, cutting straight through months of adult complexity to the heart of the matter. "Because sometimes grown-ups make mistakes when they're hurt," I'd answered, which was probably the most honest thing I'd said in therapy. "And sometimes we have to learn better ways to solve problems than just being mean to each other." "Were you mean to Mommy?" "I was, and Mommy was mean to me too. But we're learning how to be nicer now." Michael had been more direct. "I missed you, Grandma. Why didn't you come to the beach with us?" "Because Mommy and Daddy needed some time to figure out how to invite me better next time." It was a diplomatic way of explaining that their parents had excluded me completely, but it was age-appropriate truth. Dr. Hoffman had approved of my honesty with the children while maintaining their sense of security. Jessica has made the most dramatic changes, though I suspect it's partly because the resort incident forced her to confront some uncomfortable truths about her own behavior. When you've publicly celebrated your independence from someone who turns out to own the place you're celebrating in, it becomes harder to maintain the narrative that you're the victim of their controlling behavior. I realize now that I was so focused on establishing boundaries that I forgot to maintain relationships, she'd admitted during one particularly difficult session. I turned Mom into a problem to be solved instead of a person to be understood. This was as close to an apology as I'd gotten, and honestly, it was more than I'd expected. Jessica had been raised to be strong and independent, and admitting mistakes doesn't come easily to people who've built their identity around being capable of handling everything themselves. But the real progress has been in small moments. Jessica now asks for my opinion on business decisions, though she's careful to phrase it as seeking input rather than asking for help. She includes me in Emma and Michael's school events, though she coordinates through shared calendars rather than spontaneous invites. We're building a new version of our relationship, one with more structure and less assumption, more negotiation and less expectation. It's not the easy intimacy we used to have, but it's honest in ways our old relationship never was. The resort incident taught us both lessons we needed to learn. Jessica learned that independence doesn't mean isolation, and that burning bridges with family members who genuinely care about you is a luxury that can become expensive quickly. I learned that love without respect is just another form of control, and that sometimes you have to be willing to lose everything to save what matters most. Brad has been working on what Dr. Hoffman calls examining his role in family triangulation, which is therapy speak for admitting that he systematically turned his wife against her mother because it made him feel more important in their marriage. He's learning to build his relationship with Jessica without tearing down her relationship with me, though it's clearly a struggle for someone who's used to being the primary influence in his wife's life. The kids have adjusted quickly, the way children do. They accept the new structure of scheduled visits and planned activities as just another part of their routine. Emma told me last week that she likes having grandma time that's just ours, without parents managing the interaction from the sidelines. "It feels more special now," she'd said, unknowingly articulating something it had taken me months of therapy to understand. Maybe that's the silver lining in all of this. Our relationship is more intentional now, less taken for granted. When Jessica calls for our Tuesday conversation, we both show up fully present because we know this connection requires effort to maintain. When I spend time with the grandchildren, I'm not competing for attention with their parents' expectations. I'm just being their grandmother. The business relationship has improved too, surprisingly. Jessica joined the board of Thompson Luxury Resorts 3 months ago, but this time as a genuinely independent consultant rather than the boss's daughter looking for handouts. She brings ideas I wouldn't have considered and challenges, assumptions I'd never questioned. It turns out she's quite good at hospitality marketing when she's not worried about proving her independence from family influence. We're even planning a family vacation together next summer to one of my Caribbean properties naturally. But this time, it will be a genuine invitation to shared experience rather than an assumption of automatic inclusion. "I want to show the kids where their grandmother works," Jessica had said when she suggested it. "I want them to understand what you built and why that matters to our family story." It's not the relationship we used to have, and it's not the relationship I thought I wanted, but it's the relationship we can both live with, built on mutual respect rather than obligation, maintained through intention rather than assumption. Sometimes the best gift you can give someone is the space to miss you and the opportunity to choose you again with full knowledge of what that choice means. Jessica learned that her perfect family vacation was only possible because of the empire I'd built over decades of sacrifice and hard work. I learned that my love for my family was only meaningful when it was freely chosen rather than demanded. We both learned that sometimes you have to lose each other completely before you can find each other again. The resort still sends me monthly reports about guest satisfaction and occupancy rates. Every time I see those numbers, I remember the look on Jessica's face when she realized she'd been celebrating her independence from me, while literally surrounded by the results of my life's work. It was the most expensive lesson in family dynamics either of us has ever received, but it was also the most necessary. Because now, when Jessica calls me or includes me in family plans, I know she's doing it because she wants to, not because she feels guilty or obligated. And when I give advice or offer help, she knows I'm doing it because I respect her judgment, not because I think I can manage her life better than she can. It's taken us 6 months to get here, with professional help and a lot of awkward conversations, but we're finally building something that feels sustainable, something honest, something that acknowledges that love isn't enough if it doesn't come with respect, and that family obligations work both ways. The penthouse doesn't feel quite so empty anymore, and Jessica's social media posts occasionally include photos of all 3 generations together. Not because she has to, but because she chooses to. And that, it turns out, makes all the difference in the world.